The sky was dark in Canton, Illinois. On Rogers Street, outside the park, it was deserted. Annie and Kat had been out for the last 2 hours. They had to duck behind some tall bushes to avoid being caught. Both girls had just turned 18 and wanted to avoid any trouble with the law. They were graduating this year and would be going to college. Even though they were technically adults, they had no desire for their parents to give them grief. "Damn, I hate this part," whispered Kat. "Oh no, I think they spotted us," Kat said, raising her voice. Annie, annoyed by Kat's constant talking, punched her in the arm and covered her mouth. "Shut up, or they will find us for sure," Annie whispered while clamping Kat's mouth down hard. Slowly, she lifted her head until she could see around the yard. She noticed someone walking behind them, following them, but it was not the house's owner. Annie began to stand up, trying to see who was following them. "Kat, run," Annie said much louder when she realized the figure was gaining on them. Both girls were searching for their next hiding spot. They had experience with this. Every Friday and Saturday, they would roam the neighborhoods where they lived, causing some mischief. It was their way of passing time, as there wasn't much to do in Canton. Hiding was a skill they both possessed. If it weren't for Kat's tendency to talk too much, they might never get caught.
Tonight, they were carrying old book bags, each containing a couple of cartons of eggs. When it was comfortable, Annie said, "It's time for us to go back to your house." It had been the plan they had used so many times. This weekend it was Kat's parents who were out of town, and she was supposed to spend the night at Annie's. The greatest part about it is none of their parents had the slightest clue that whichever house was empty was where they partied. Sometimes by themselves, sometimes with friends. Annie's parents just thought she was spending the night with Jamie. Jamie was the fictitious girl used to cover their lies so many times.
Annie and Kat had been friends since they were very young. Annie had always been the leader of the two, and Kat would lose her way without her. Kat, a cute petite brunette who should have been born a blonde, was innocent, naive, and a bit absent-minded. She had a joyous smile and loved to talk constantly. Her green eyes shone like emeralds in different types of lighting. To Kat, Annie was her world. They were inseparable, and she was devoted to her friend. There are leaders and followers in this world, and Kat was a follower. There was only one time she had to be away from Annie. Last year, Annie left for several months with no explanation. When she returned, all she said was that she had visited some relatives. The subject seemed to be dropped and was never brought back up. Annie was striking in any light. She had an unforgiving aura that seemed to surround her and convey that she was a winner. Her hair was long and blonde with traces of strawberry. She was taller than Kat by a couple of inches at 5'7". Her eyes were like a chameleon's, able to blend into any scenery, but mainly remained a bright hazel. There was not a single blemish on her perfect body. Annie excelled at everything she tried. She was the captain of the cheerleading team and captain of the debate team. She was also on her path to becoming valedictorian. Annie looked all around her, and everywhere she looked, she saw a world she could shape into what she wanted. If you heard this statement from her, you would have to believe it. Annie had a smile that could stop traffic. She was so beautiful. At the same time, she had her secrets, so she tried to remain quiet more often, absorbing information wherever it was offered.
The two girls were holding hands under the stars, feeling at peace as if there was no tomorrow. As they walked down Walker Street, they felt safe knowing that Gaines was just the next street over, and they could finally put this night to rest. Both of them were exhausted, and they still had the whole weekend to use up the rest of the eggs. However, as they walked by Sally Sanders' house, they couldn't resist.
Kat growled, "That bitch." Then she got really quiet. Annie rolled her eyes and said, "Jason was a lousy boyfriend anyway." She paused, looking at how Kat's eyes had glazed. "But that skank should have kept her hands off." You would have thought Annie would have been mad, but she thought it was funny. So what? Jason had left her for the school slut who had slept her way to the top of the school's food chain. She was going to break up with him anyway. Kat, however, had a different take. Annie was her closest friend. They had been through so many things together. Hell, they drank from the same bottle when they were babies. They might as well be sisters. Kat had vowed, in her exact words, "I will cut his nuts off and beat that bitch Sanders down."
Sally and Jason are no skin off my back. It does piss me off, though. He's down in Cancun with Sally and her parents. Annie paused. The smile she achieved at that moment could not be denied. Let's do it! Standing in front of the house, both of them felt the need to let off the adrenaline. What happened next could only be described as a messy 15 minutes of plummeting the house with eggs.
When they were left with 8, they decided to finish it off with the car Sally's daddy had just bought her. "The bitch can't drive for another 2 years. Fucking slut doesn't deserve it," Kat said as she threw the last egg. They made their getaway as fast as they could, leaving the rest of Worcester in the dust. What neither of them saw was the black figure standing by a large tree, watching them pass. Pretty night out here, isn't it? The stutter was evident, but other than that, neither girl could find any other distinguishing feature. Kat had been so startled that she fell straight to the ground before the stranger finished his sentence. On the other hand, Annie, who was always ready for anything, whirled around and almost hit the dark figure with her book bag. It was a male. There was no discernible age, but the raspy stutter belonged to someone much older than these girls. "D.D. Do you have a ligot?" the man said as Kat almost peed herself while sitting on the ground. "We don't smoke," Annie said. It was a clever lie. Both girls had lighters, but all they wanted was to distance themselves from this freak. "No problem." The man spit as he took a slight step forward. "Awful latte to be out, I sent it?" Neither girl spoke because they could not stop looking at the face of the man who had just stepped in the light. 3 nasty scars covered the left side of his face. His nose shape was a little off. He was missing half an ear and more than half of his teeth. The smile that greeted them had the quality of being empty and sinister at the same time. "SS so late, NNN01 would hear you scream." This random comment could not be good.
Annie and Kat mumbled something that sounded like goodbye and ran. They did not stop until they were at Annie's house. Then they backtracked 2 streets to get back to Kat's. What neither of them saw as they entered Kat's door was the man watching them from the other side of the street. Kat and Annie took a short nap and woke up to the sound of a police car speeding down the road. Annie quickly put on her shorts, followed by Kat. They both rushed out of the door as if the house was on fire. When they reached the end of Gain Street, they saw the reason for the police car. At the bottom of Walker Street, Sally, Jason, and their family had returned home earlier in the morning. Annie glanced at the small watch on her wrist.
"Damn, Kat, we beat them by 4 hours. "Oh shit, Jason is walking this way," Kat said. Jason walked up looking smug. "Do you know anything about this?" Kat prepared a bitchy reply as Annie interrupted her thoughts. "Oh, hi, Jason. What happened?" Never had a voice sounded so pleasant and snarky at the same time. One thing is for sure. It was an innocent voice, and Jason appeared surprised. "Oh, probably just some idiots." Jason had warmed up. "So, Annie, how are you doing?" "Answer her question," Kat grumbled. "What happened?" Jason stared at Kat like she was a bug he would squish. Someone egged Sally's house and car? Pity. Kat couldn't stop herself. The bitch wasn't vandalized as bad as the house. Wait! Kat was so excited. She already has been vandalized by every dumbass guy in the school.
"Lesbian," Jason snarled. Kat said coolly, "If all men were like you, I'd have to be." "Shut up, Kat, you bitch," Jason commanded. "Hey, Jason," Kat sneered. "The short bus will be along in a minute. Better fetch your helmet." They went on like this for a long while. Annie was only half listening. She couldn't be positive, but she knew she was being watched. The creepiest thing is, she knew it was the stranger from last night. From a safe distance, a black figure waited, watching. As Annie and Kat returned to the house, they hurried as fast as they could. They needed to eat and plan for the day ahead. Annie guided Kat quickly, but she didn't mention the figure that had been watching them. When she looked back, it was clear that the dark figure was walking in the opposite direction. Martin decided to head home because the daylight was bothering his eyes, and the girls seemed to be leaving for the day.